Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another After Effects tutorial, and today we do this. Okay, so before we get started, make sure you go to the description of the video and download the assets that we're going to need for this tutorial. We are also going to need Element 3D and Trapcode Particular. With that being said, let's get started. Okay, so we are back in After Effects, and first thing we are going to do, we are going to import the assets that we downloaded, in which for me I have them on my desktop. First I'm going to import the image, which is my background. Now I'm going to go to composition, new composition. Let's make it 6 seconds is fine. Okay, so in this composition now I'm going to press Ctrl Y to make a new layer. This is the keyboard shortcut. And I'm gonna name this layer E for element. Now I'm gonna come to the effects and presets and type in element. Now I just dragged element. Okay, now that element has been loaded, I will click scene setup, and now it's time to import the rest of the assets. So I'm gonna hit import, go to my desktop, which is where I have my assets. Now I'm gonna bring in first the aircraft. So I'm gonna hit the body and that model center. Okay, this is something you guys have to take in consideration. The force alignment, usually what this means, it puts the pivot of the actual object wherever you select it. So for example, for model, top, bottom, and so on. So model center, and the reason why I'm choosing model center you will see right now. So I'm gonna scale this to about 2%. Okay, so now that it's scaled, I'm gonna go ahead and attach the textures for these guys. Okay, so once we attach this texture, you're gonna see that our diffuse color is set to black, so that's why when we attach the image nothing will happen. But we have to set this to white, or we can change it to just sort of colorize it, but we'll set it to white for now and hit OK. The normal bump, we're gonna select the same texture and then hit convert to bump. So now that we have that aircraft, now I'm gonna come into this, which is called number 2, this OBJ, and you can see that this is the wing. I don't know what this thing is called, and it doesn't really set in the center, and that is because everything was set to the center of this model. So what I'm going to do is set it to my front view. And the reason why I'm doing this is I want to center this right there. Now I'm going to come to my, well, this one's fine. I'm going to come to my right view, and I'm just going to move it back in space. Okay, now I'll move it to the right one actually. Okay, so now that I'm in my right view, I just want to align this slightly as best as possible with this. So it will look like this thing is spinning. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we already have this texture made. As soon as you create a texture or a material, it will be saved here, or this is the scene materials basically, and now what I can do is simply drag it and add it to this one. And since they're both using the same texture, you can see that it fits. So that's that. Next, now that we have our little airplane here, what we want to do Well, actually, let's go back to scene setup. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna select this piece, which is what makes the airplane fly. It spins. We have to set an auxiliary animation channel. We'll set this to, let's say, 1, and the body will set it to. Nope, that's fine. We don't need to animate the body, I believe. So far, they are both in group 1, so that's okay. I'm gonna hit OK. Now we'll go to group 1, create group knoll. So I'm gonna create this knoll so I am able to. Well, before I create the knoll, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to layer, new, camera. How about if we set a 50 millimeter? We hit OK. So now I select the knoll. I'm gonna spin it a little bit, and I'm gonna select that view. So now I'm gonna select my camera, and I'm gonna zoom in. Well, not zooming in actually. I'm panning. So now I have the camera positioned somewhere around where I want it. So we can start getting things looking somewhat towards where we want them to. I'm gonna come here and drag in the image that I had originally brought into the project. So as you can see, this image is pretty big. So we can use this guy somewhere around that. And as soon as I make it a 3D layer, our camera will also affect the image. So we're kind of all right. All right, so I'm going to select that position for now. So I'm going to come into element, and now I'm going to go to auxiliary channels, and remember we set this little piece to auxiliary channel 1. So now I got to go to my rotations, and I believe it's this one. Okay, so it's channel 1 rotation. Sure, it has rotation Z. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I can simply create some keyframes for this value, but instead of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an expression. So I'm going to type in time times asterisk times, let's see, 10,000. So it's time times 10,000. So now this thing will spin. So even if I make the composition larger or shorter, this thing will keep on spinning. So now when we turn on our motion blur, you can see how it looks. Now we're starting to get some of that realism. Okay, so now we go to group 1. We're gonna go to particle replicator. The replicator shape, we're gonna choose point. Let's bring up 100 units. So now we select replicator effect. We go to scatter. And what we want to do is we want to start increasing these values. So let me put 1. Okay, so 100 is okay. And actually, if I select my camera, you can see that they're basically all around me. Well, no, not really. Okay, so now if we want to give this a little bit more of realism, so what we can do is, so we can animate our knoll. So I'm going to go to frame 1. I'm going to hit P to select the position. Then I'm going to go to my last frame. And I'm just going to move them a bit. Okay. So now I have all the planes moving, but they are moving. They are all moving at the same speed. So if we want to make this look slightly better, we're going to go to the C scatter and set up a keyframe, and also for the Y scatter and set up a keyframe, and also for the X scatter. So we set up keyframes, and then we type in, let's say, 500. Okay, so we type in 500 in each, and we're gonna get this. So basically what's going on here is, as the entire planes move from left to right, they are also scattering. So they are also moving at the same time into uh, all the axes, X, Y, and Z, positive and negative. So even when they're moving backwards, because they will move backwards, you won't be able to see it because it's automatically moving forward through the knoll. So they will just seem slower, but in reality they are moving. Okay, so now I can come back to element, and on the position C, I'm just gonna move these back in space, and I'm going to bump up the particle. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna come back to element, and in the replicator effects, in the scatter. Okay, so I'm gonna hit the stopwatch to delete the keyframes on the C scatter. I'm gonna do the same thing for all the scatters. Okay, so I'm gonna change these values. The Y scatter from 100, I'm gonna bump it up to 150 on the last keyframe. And now let's see how that looks. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Last frame for C scatter, I'm gonna bump it up to 150. Okay, so now that we have this first part, we're gonna go to scene setup one more time. And I will duplicate the group. So this group will be in group number 2. And I'm gonna hit OK. Okay, so now I am going to go to group number 2 now that our second aircraft has been created. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a group knoll. So I just hit create, and now I'm just gonna position it just to align it. Now we can go at exact here, for example, just copy this and whatever. Well, let's do that. Let's go ahead and copy. All right. Okay, we can see that the rotation here is 88 and 88. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to parent this second knoll to the first one. I mean, they both occupy the same space, which is okay. But I just want to get that movement without having to animate it again. So now that we have that, we're going to go back to our scene setup. And on this group folder number 2, we are also going to bring in our last asset, which is desktop. Okay, the bomb. And I'm gonna hit model center. That's okay. And if I move it out, where's this thing? Okay, it seems like this thing is extremely small, so I'm gonna have to scale it up. Let's see, how about, okay, so I'm gonna have to scale this up quite a lot. Alright. Now, just gonna rotate it. And now, for the material, I'm gonna bring in the bomb texture. Now I'm gonna hit OK. And also for the normal. Again, this is to and again, I'm just gonna drag it in. Okay, so we're gonna have to come down to our surface options and change the normals from model to auto normals, because it seems that the normals from the original model are flipped. Okay, so another thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come into my element, and under custom layers I'm gonna go to custom texture maps, and on layer 1 I'm gonna add this image, and this is why. I'm gonna go back to scene setup. We're gonna use that image as a our environment. So I'm gonna select that image, and the color or the reflectance of the model should change also. Okay, so we're gonna leave it like that. I'm gonna hit OK, and you can see that the models actually get a little bit more blue. All right, so now that we have that, well, we're gonna go do one more thing. We're gonna go to element again, go into scene setup, and the bomb, we want to position it somewhere around here, because the bomb's gonna fall from this side of the plane. Obviously the plane does not have what am I doing? The plane does not have any options where that can come out of, but you know, just for something like this, which is supposed to reflect low quality, it's okay. If you guys, but maybe later we'll learn how to convert this into a 3D object once we start getting into the 3D softwares and whatnot. We might even build our own plane. We'll see. Okay, so now I come in and I select my bomb, and I'm gonna add that to channel animation number 1. And I'm not sure if I'm gonna move the plane and the body, but these I'm gonna add them to channel animation number 2. So only the bomb is on channel animation number 1. Okay, now I'm gonna hit OK. So what I'm going to do now is I need to go to my auxiliary channels, and I'm gonna start from here. So channel 1, remember channel 1 is our bomb. So I want to get precision in Y, and I'm going to start right there. So I am going to make a keyframe on the first frame, set up a keyframe, and then bring this. I'm going to set this number to about a 50. Alright, another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the rotation. So I set up a keyframe on the Z rotation. I come to the last frame, and we are gonna do like minus 45 or something like that. I think that's fine. All right. Let's see. Now I'm gonna press U on my keyboard. So I just want to grab this, the channel rotation, and press F9 to make it ease out. I think it's okay. Okay, so we are still in group number 2. So we're gonna go to particle look, we're gonna go to particle replicator, and then we are gonna type in here 30. Let's go for 35. Whatever. And now after that, we're going to go to replicator effects. And just like the other one, we are going to scatter these. So this is, let's see, 100. Um, um, I can. I'm just gonna move these back in further from the camera so we can. Let's go to 2000. Okay, so now I can close my group. If you're planning on doing some other sort of not different scene, but a different camera movement, go right here is where you decide where the camera movement is. If you're going to be closer to the plane, further from the plane, further from the shot, or whatnot. Okay, and so since I already have this, and you can see the depth and that it's being felt, or at least that's what I see. That there's quite some depth in space at their position in a pretty large space. So the camera can reflect that, and I'm pretty much okay with that movement. We could probably push these the planes a little bit more to the back of the camera, but it's okay at this point. So I'm okay with that scene. I'm okay with that camera movement. So what I'm going to do now is basically go to my camera and turn on my depth of field. Now for this, I have to go to full quality so I can see exactly what the outcome is going to be. And you can see that my depth of field is somewhat okay. It's within the 26,000, yeah, 26,000 pixels or so. So, and if I increase my blur level, you will see that some we can make the focus distance more obvious, I guess. So I am gonna just not these. I'm just gonna set up a keyframe on the focus distance, and I'm gonna go to the last frame. Well, we'll see how it looks. No, in this case, I actually want to comment. Okay, so at the end of at the very last frame, I'm gonna set the focus distance to 1000. Again, this is only with this specific camera movement. Uh, you guys go ahead and choose the camera movement. I'm just showing you how I go about setting up the focus distance with the camera. And this is taking quite a good amount of memory, but I just want to have it done right now. So we can also bump up the aperture, which will also make the focus distance more obvious. But in this particular case, I don't want to do that because I want to see a little bit more from the distance, and you can actually see that it's taking a good amount of time to calculate that. So the more we bump up these numbers, the more it will take to render. Okay, now I'm just going to turn off the depth field to continue with my comp. But since now I have all that, I have the depth of field already signed in, I can start bumping up effects and whatnot. So let's start with going for the looks. I am going to press Control Alt and Y to make a new adjustment layer. And in this, I'm going to go to my effects and presets, and I'm going to add some noise. So re-noiser, we can add that. Let's go for the standard. I believe this is just a built-in plugin. So I'm going to bump this up, and I think that's about right for like if we were watching a very old TV. Let's put it at about 50. All right. Okay. Next, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a tint because I want to convert all this to black and white. Okay, so now that we have that done and we have our camera also set up, I am gonna press Control Y to make a new layer, and I'm just gonna name this P for fast or whatever. But this is gonna contain particular. So I'm gonna add particular, and we're gonna do this pretty quick. We're gonna come to the effects and effects builder or presets builder. I'm not sure what it's called, and I'm going to add cloud cover. As soon as that's, yeah, I'm just gonna hit apply. We can set it up there, but I'm not used to that user interface. Uh, okay, so I'm gonna speed this up quite a bit, and I'm gonna go to the third. You know what? I'm also gonna turn this off just so we can move a bit quicker here. The emitter size in X, we're gonna set this to 0 because we want this to be moving, but we just don't want to waste any space on X. Now we are going to position this on the left side of our screen, beyond our screen actually. Somewhere around there it's okay. And before we do any more changes, we're going to come to our physics, and under air, we are going to add wind on X. I believe, is it X? Yes. Wind on X, we are going to add, let's say 100. 100 is okay, but let's see, 5. Okay, that's fine. So we could do that. Let's see, 500. All right, so now that we've added that, we can come back to our position and crank it up even more. We can set it up to like something like 0. Okay, well actually in the negative, we can go for like negative 20 or so. And on our emitter size and Y, we do want to pump that up. All right, so now that we have that, we bring in our assets and we bring in that. We could position these, make actually 2. No, not duplicate particular. We can Control D to duplicate the clouds, and then in here we could just do some quick tweaks like particles per second 100, and these will be behind the planes. That way we have kind of like a variety in between them, gives them more depth. Okay, so for now we have that, but I am gonna set these blending modes to screen. Also with that, yeah, we can, doesn't really matter this one. Well, actually it does. And also this one. Okay. So in under the top layer, I'm gonna go to the particle, and the opacity I'm actually gonna type 2. All right. All right. So now that I have made this somewhat of a, well, actually, still full of a old TV look. It actually looks somewhat okay here, but as soon as we bump up the depth of field, here we're gonna have some changes already done. So here, I mean, we could still add a few things. For example, here I'm just gonna type in V for the name. I'm gonna add a vignette. Old screens had these sort of spots in the corners where in the corners of the screens, because light was harder there, so they were somewhat of dark spots. Not really dark, but you'll see right now. So they did have some sort of vignette. So I'm gonna set the mask to subtract. I'm just gonna make an oval here. Uh, the feathering for the mask, I'm gonna go for like 250 pixels, and I'm gonna press T for the opacity and bring it down to like 50. And so now we have that. On top of that, beyond the tint and the noise, this at this point still looks like a modern old looking TV, if you know what I mean. Why? Because it still looks kind of crisp. So what I'm gonna do is I am gonna add a blur. Let's see, what can we do? Uh, let's go for a Gaussian blur, and then on this blur we can type in maybe like a 10. Now that's quite some pretty high, but let's see. How about 2? So 2 is okay. We could probably go for like 3 or 4. And now that looks more like an old TV. But the problem here is that I need to bring in my noise on top of that. So to me, this already has the look that I was going for, um, as far as the old looking TV and whatnot. Uh, so now, I mean, we can bring this one down to like a 2 again, and but it's still kind of, to me, those old TVs, they had to be blurry as hell. So and or not even TVs, they were probably projections at the time. So maybe a 3 should be fine, I think. Um, Another thing that we want to do is we want to turn on these motion blurs for the clouds. You can see that my system is taking quite some time now just to render the motion blur. So I'm going to turn that off for now. Okay, so in this particular case, I'm going to turn off the adjustment layer and the lights. I'm sorry, the clouds. To I need to make a new light. So the color of the light, I'm gonna make it around this blue, and I'm gonna set it to 100. Uh, I'm gonna go to my image, and I'm gonna type in AA, press AA, and turn off accept lights, because I do not want this uh, to accept lights at all. So here you can see the difference. Actually, let me turn this off. Okay, I'm gonna turn off the depth of field for now. Okay, so the light needs to be positioned higher. So X, Y. I'm just gonna bring it up quite high. Okay. So now that that is done, I'm just gonna come into the render settings, and we have a few different options here. Uh, right now, the most basic one would be the ambient occlusion. Turn our ambient occlusion off, and you can see here that it actually uh, makes the spots darker. And if we bump this up, we can even see how they become a lot darker actually. Uh, but here we have to take a lot of things in consideration. So maybe like even a 25 would still be somewhat okay. And if we bump this up, you can see the difference. So maybe this particular layer should be around 50 perhaps, or so, like 75. Okay, maybe let me check my noise. How is my noise? Because even like that, it looks okay. You can see that the blur is a good blur, and I really like this look. Uh, but you can see that it looks nice. But I was going for that old look, so Okay, so finally what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna turn on my vignette and I'm gonna turn off use color noise. And with that, it's gonna give it a different noise look without colors. And that is and finally just turn on my motion blur. Alright, so that's it for today's video. I hope you guys liked it and maybe learned something from it. If you did, please make sure you hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you guys have any suggestions for any future videos, please make sure you post it in the comments below. I'm always open for new suggestions and to learn from others. As always, I want to thank you guys for stopping by in this, your house, Dark House. I'm Sean Garris, and I'll see you guys next time. Selfish, I'm unkind. Sucker love,